Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Ramey, I would like to be able to hear your answer. If you can keep it brief, we've got a little limited amount of time. We're talking about best available science. What was the discrepancy between the state of Colorado and the map produced by Garfield County?
It's a question of the resolution of the data. Much higher resolution in the vegetation mapping provided, done by the county and their GIS group, as opposed to that being proposed by the federal agencies. The same situation has been found in the Gunnison sage grouse as well, where large parts of non-habitat, including the town of Dove Creek and the Gunnison Gorge, are declared as critical habitat. And so if one has the chance to obtain the data and do a superior analysis, it benefits species protection because you can put the...
So it goes to the Commissioner's statement. It was a 50,000-foot view. You narrowed this down to actually look at something that you noted in your testimony. Need a certain amount of ground cover, need a certain amount of water to be able to available if you really want to be able to recover the species. The broad brush stroke simply doesn't work. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate. There's a lot of collateral damage in terms of public support when critical habitats are overextended.
Great. Commissioner, let's talk about real acres. I think in the West it is so expansive. You said a 70% reduction. How many acres did they want to include in Garfield County, and what did you reduce it to with good science?
Garfield County had 220,000 acres of priority habitat. With good science, that was reduced to about 70,000 acres.
About 70,000 acres, a huge reduction in that. You know, Mr. Bean, I'd like to be able to find out, you talked about transparency and wanting to be able to open the door on that. And why are we not releasing the NTT report? Like this one?
The NTT report was published a couple of years ago. It has been released.
We don't have the information. Have you received the information, Mr. Ringy?
I think you're mistaken on that. I think that what you might be referring to is the sage-grouse lek count data that are the basis, the fundamental basis of the 2010 listing decision on the greater sage-grouse. And that data was analyzed under this federal cooperative agreement from the Fish and Wildlife Service, and yet 6 years later, the data are still not public.
Why is that not public, Mr. Bean?
The data, well, first of all, the study is a study by Dr. Garton and others. The authors of the study are employed by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the University of Idaho. The data they use to compile their report is state-maintained data. That data has never been made available to the Fish and Wildlife.
Are you making decisions off that data?
We are not making decisions off of that.
Are you using that data?
We will be using the report and other information to make a decision.
Don't you think that ought to be public if we're talking about transparency?
I think that if the states decide to release that data, it would be a good thing.
You're an advisor to Fish and Wildlife and Department of Interior. Are you giving them advice? We need to be able to have transparency so we can make good, sound judgments?
I have advocated in my testimony and elsewhere transparency. I've also made clear that we cannot withhold what we do not have. And in this instance, what the information involved is maintained and controlled by the states.
Let's talk a little bit about population count. Commissioner, have you been given a goal to be able to reach how many birds and we've achieved a recovery?
No, I think that's one of the difficulties that Dr. Ramey was talking about, is that even in our small area, there is no set population. It's an estimate, and we actually have a biologist from CPW working there, and but we don't have a number that's specific to our area.
Mr. Bean, how do we get recovery if we don't know what the numbers are?
Numbers are part of the equation. The main focus is threats, identifying and addressing threats. The Fish and Wildlife Service is required by Congress's law, the Endangered Species Act, to consider 5 factors in deciding whether or not a species is to be listed.
You know, the Commissioner just gave us some pretty big numbers in terms of the population of the bird. How do we know when we've got an 11-state recovery program, if we've had success in Colorado, it's still going to be listed if it's not achieved by some ambiguous number that you won't give us in Wyoming, that we've achieved recovery? How do we actually win, given what you're laying out?
Well,
without transparency.
What the Fish and Wildlife Service is doing at present is working closely with Colorado and the other 10 states that have...
Our governor pointed out that we've got the best science on the ground in the state of Colorado in achieving recovery and questioning those policies.
I'm aware of the governor's letter. With respect to the matter that Mr. Jankowski raised, the Bureau of Land Management's EIS is a draft EIS. They have made no final decision. They have made no final EIS. They are in the process of incorporating data from the county and others in a revised EIS. It is a testament to the strength of the process that the information available to the Bureau can improve through the input from the counties and others. And as the Bureau makes a decision on its land use plan, it will have the benefit of the county's input and will have the ability to make a well-informed decision.
The time of the gentleman has expired. Chair recognizes